Perfect. All right, well, let's go ahead. All right. So we are live and finally, just a few minutes late tonight, little technical difficulty. Had to download a new version for the stream. So welcome everyone onto the stream at Twitch TV /Saicred. That's S-A-I. I can never spell my name. It's terrible. S-A-I-C-R-E-D. We've also got Muldoon, who is with us today, who is currently streaming on his as well. So guys, if you're here looking to check Muldoon out and give him a little support as well, Mal, can you make sure that you tell everybody where they can find you at or see you at?
Yeah, certainly. I am also on Twitch. That is twitch.tv/MRPD Muldoon, as in Mr. PD Muldoon.
Perfect. Okay, so tonight we had a pretty exciting week. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with, let's see if we have any news coming up. Anything coming up this week? Well, we still have the Pantheon Radio competition going on. So for everybody out there that's listening into the broadcast tonight over Pantheon Radio, thank you for tuning in. Really excited to have you join us every Wednesday and Friday as we do. And just remember that competition is still going on through the rest of March. So please go check that out at pantheonradio.com/compo. That's COMPO. And that is going to be an Echo Dot up for grab, a few other things. So guys, really hope that we get a lot of submissions in for that. It's a really neat competition. I'm glad the guys at Pantheon Radio are putting that together. I think it's something that's just fun. It's easy to get involved in, and it helps the community kind of, put their stamp on Pantheon Radio as well. So as Pantheon Radio continues to flourish and get more and more content creators, broadcasters, more content for you to listen to, and more people for you to listen to as well, like myself doing podcasts, please show some support to them. Go to their website, check out what they've got there. They've got some donation links in case you would like to help provide some funding for them to, continue enhancing the podcast, the radio itself, and the website and such. You've also got the competition where they're trying to get back to the community, make it fun and engaging, things like that, or just give them some feedback. You can always, go to the page there on the website and give them some feedback. Let them know what you would like to see. They've got a Twitter as well, which is, I believe, Pantheon_radio. And I'm going to double check that by the end of the segment here. But let me just go ahead and do that now because I'm going to forget. We're going to have some fun conversation. Yeah, it is. Okay. So yeah, go check them out on Twitter as well. That's at Pantheon_radio. And make sure you give them some feedback. Let them know who you would like to see on here, things like that. So again, guys, make sure you're following myself and Muldoon as we're going to continue to do these broadcasts, but also make sure you're following Pantheon Radio, showing them support, love as well. We enjoy broadcasting live over Pantheon Radio. So, I can't say that enough and stress that enough, that it's really a neat thing. Speaking of that, this Monday, Zippy and Kilson got on with the VoT and had a little bit of a kind of a back and forth dev Q&A with them over AI. And I don't know, I'm hoping everyone was able to catch that. If not, they were able to go to Voice of Terminus's YouTube channel to check out that video that was posted as well. It's about an hour and a half of Q&A with Zippy and Kilson talking about a variety of things focused around the AI in Pantheon. I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was a great show. It was broadcast live over Pantheon Radio. I got to listen to it on both. I was traveling during that time, so I got to not only get on the stream when I got home, but I got to listen to it on the radio while I was on the way home. So I really enjoyed that. But I think they did a fantastic job, and I wanted to start tonight's segment off with that. Just a little snippet of that. Mal, I've got a few things that I thought were really neat, but I just wanted to ask you, was there one thing, we don't have to talk about the whole thing, but was there one thing in that, or one segment, or one piece of it that you caught that really stood out to you? Or were you able to see it yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, the one thing that really stuck out to me was so off message. Um, I have always wanted to be a guide since I was a kid playing EverQuest. And I cannot tell you how excited I was to hear that they're going to open that up for applications. I, of course, am doing this for the fun of it. I really like being part of the community. Um, kind of from a selfish standpoint, I kind of hope that this catapults me to a position where I could be like, "Hey, maybe you've heard of me. I'd like to be a guide in the game," because I would love that. I would love to just have like a even a hidden persona. I don't have to be known as Muldoon doing the guide thing, but just to be able to get out there, do quests with people, do weird stuff, spawn a bunch of weird stuff near a pond and make people fish for it or something. That'd be so much fun for me. I would really like that. Um, other than that, like as far as the actual message is concerned, it sounds like the whole AI message is that, hey guys, we want to have a better AI than found in other games, and our dispositions are really important. But they didn't have like a lot of concrete information of it. So that kind of stood out to me. I listened to it again today because I thought after listening to it the first time, man, there just wasn't like a whole bunch of content in it. And I felt like that wasn't a fair criticism. So I gave it another listen. Wasn't a whole lot more that I heard. But other than that, like I'm excited to see what they can do. I do kind of want to touch on the idea of dispositions, especially considering there's a huge post about it on the forums at some point. But I'll toss it back to you because I don't want to monopolize a bunch of time.
No, no, no. We'll definitely. You know what? I'll go. I'll tell you what really stood out to me, and then we'll go into the dispositions. So, because what stood out to me was the dispositions, but there was a key part that I picked up on, which was, will mob AI change based off your group makeup? Now, when I heard this question at first, I was like, well, okay, what does that mean? Like, does that mean that just at random the mob can do different things or respond differently, just based off of who I have in the group? And I didn't really think about it too much. But then they, mentioned, well, if there's let's say that there's a wizard in your group one time and then there's not the next, but there's a druid in your group the next. Will different mobs respond differently to those different classes being in your group? And started thinking about that more and more, and it led me to the thought process of, well, hold on, this is a really, really interesting idea, because not only does it mean that, depending on my group makeup, that I could have a different encounter, a different experience, facing certain mobs in certain areas, but I could have a different experience on a alternate character that I make myself. Like the game itself could provide a very unique and different experience throughout the leveling and experience, like, and throughout the adventuring of exploring the map, the tournaments and things like that, because the mobs are going to act differently towards me. Let's say before I was a summoner and certain mobs acted a certain way with me in the group as a summoner. I was the piece, I was the factor that really caused that mob to act that certain way, that disposition to behave, the way it did. But now let's say I've switched over and I've become a warrior, and I no longer have that summoner in my group, and I'm expecting a mob to act a certain way, to behave a certain way, to do certain things, and it's not. It's a whole new experience, and it's just a small minor tweak potentially, or maybe it's even up to a higher level. Maybe it's not just lower level mobs, maybe it's not just those normal mobs, but maybe it even goes up to those higher tier, bosses or something like that, to where they act differently now as well. They respond differently. And I'm so used to playing on that one character because that was my main for so long, that now I'm playing the game again with a different character, a different class. And it's changing the dynamics of the game. It's changing the way that I'm playing the game. I'm enjoying it. I'm seeing the game from a different angle, just ever so slightly. That makes it somewhat refreshing, somewhat new. That's kind of my thought when I heard this question and really started thinking about it more and more, which leads right into the dispositions. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that, I mean, you could think would be exciting as well going forward in the future?
I had considered that because when I heard it said, it's funny because I was kind of thinking in my mind, like, I'm really kind of bent on probably the enchanter or summoner or something like that. And I thought about, what if I entered a town that was like anti-magic? So anything that magic users do causes them a great deal more threat than usual, stuff like that. Um, and it kind of sounds like maybe that's the direction they're going to go in. Like, I don't think they're going to take pause and be like, boy, a druid, I better tell the others. I don't think it's going to be very dialogue type thing. I think that there may just be some core game mechanics that kind of shifted a bit. And I think that's interesting. When it comes to the whole conversation of dispositions, I am kind of a weird one because I don't mind monotony. I don't think that a game gets boring because I've done it a billion times before. I think it gets boring when there's something not rewarding about doing it anymore. So I don't find the reward being um, the experience itself. Sometimes the reward is that, but for the most part, since I play games that have a lot of replay value and I love MMOs for that reason, I usually want there to be some carrot on this stick, something that drives me to doing it.
Yeah.
And I'll do it into eternity. So I say all that to preface, like, I'm not super jazzed up about dispositions. It's like not the number one topic I want to talk about personally. But when I heard that, I thought that was really cool because what I want from Pantheon is some depth to the world, not necessarily randomness or difference in the way that I
Yeah.
experience the game every time I do it. I want there to be places I go where it's like a werewolf town and werewolves like druids, so druids don't have as much aggro or they'll never attack a druid or just something weird like that. I mean, obviously that would be a little broken, but I think it'd be really cool to have that aspect in there because it enriches the entire world somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention you. So you said, you don't like to have a lot of randomness, and I think they mentioned that as well. The question was asked about the RNG in today's MMOs. VR stance on RNG in today's MMOs. I completely agreed with the response that they gave, which is basically people blame RNG for a lot of things in the game. They blame that they didn't get this item dropped during an encounter for 6 months because RNG and it's terrible. And they blame a lot of different factors on RNG. But at the same time, I think that they hit it on the head when they said you have to have some random factor in it. You have to have something that's almost predictable. You have to have like kind of a balance, like it's predictable, but it's predictable at a certain scale. It could be like one of 4 predictable responses. Now, still, that's going to be slightly somewhat of a random response or disposition that occurs or something like that. But you can at least, if you know all 4 of those, you can prepare for each one of those to the best of your ability, and then you have to adjust, once you find out which one is going to be or something like that. Like, there has to be some sort of, it can't just be wide open where there's a million different responses and you never know what's going to happen. I mean, a lot of people, I guess, enjoy that because that would be more like a PvP, like you're actually playing another human being type deal. But even then, if you're playing another human being, let's just think of PvP, for example. If you're playing another person in PvP, they've only got so many abilities they can use in their toolkit. Even that is limited in the quote-unquote RNG or the randomness that can take place with what's going to happen and when. So you still have sort of a you still have sort of something that's predictable in human nature. And I think that's the same thing. You have to have something that's predictable in the game. It has to be to a point where it's not just purely RNG, but at the same time, you want something you don't want it to be the exact same thing every single time. Maybe a little bit of a random wild card in there every once in a while to spice it up is a nice thing to have. So I like that response. I like that they said that they're going to make sure that they have a balance of predictability and randomness within the game and not just a complete one side or the other. They're going to have a nice balance of it. But I did think that was a good response from them. And I think it kind of leads into what you're saying is you like that predictability. You like to have, okay, if I do X, Y, Z, I should get ABC from that. And maybe you get A 1 time or 10 times, and maybe you get B 1 time or 3 times, and maybe you don't get A, B, or C on the same every time, but you might get one of those each time. So being predictable, if you do X, Y, Z enough times, you will eventually get A, B, and C. So
yeah, and I guess I don't want to oversell the fact I don't necessarily like predictability over randomness. I guess my point is I don't necessarily require it. That's not what's going to keep me in the game for longevity. One thing I would probably dislike randomness in, where the concept of RNG is concerned, is something like crafting. That would probably annoy me a lot. In the sense that if there's built-in randomness, that's fine. But I wouldn't want just something to go like horribly wrong, like during a craft, and not have a way to deal with it. So I think that it's more. I don't think that dispositions need to drive. They don't need to be the one relied upon vehicle for catapulting the game into the future and keeping it relevant.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think that that's kind of some of the energy behind the discussion. Some of it I think is just theory crafting wanted to talk about dispositions, understand them better as a community, but also I think some of the reason why people are so passionate about them is that they're afraid that one day the game will get stale. So why don't we put all of our eggs in the basket of dispositions and imagine it further than what has been formally communicated by them? And I guess I just don't feel that way. I feel there are other ways to achieve that. So, but not that I don't want dispositions to exist. I also would not want dispositions to create like 4,096 different ways that a boss fight could go. Like, I think, keeping it reasonable down to it doesn't need to be scripted. I guess because none of us
Yeah.
have really ever seen what the game could be with dispositions. We've only ever seen really scripted fights. I don't know. Maybe it'll blow me away, and maybe it'll be something.
Well, I'm trying to think, and I mean, I know that there's been MMOs in the past where certain like raid encounters, will have like one of two possibilities, and you have to like, or it'll have like, or a boss will have like three different phases, but you're not sure which phase is going to be at which time or something like that. I've seen something like that where they tried to spice it up that way. And absolutely, I agree with you. I mean, disposition isn't going to be the end all be all, but I think that it's just one of those layers on this, 7-layer cake that we're getting that just really helps build the whole thing out. And I really like it. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
where I see it.
So I think that we're on the same page with that. I really do. I love the disposition system, the way they're describing it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out. But I'm complete agreement with you. I think if you put all your eggs into one basket, no matter what basket that is, it's not going to be where you need to be, long term. You really have to have a multi-layer system here in place where, like they mentioned environmental effects that will have impact. So you're not looking at just the mob and how it responds to maybe a class, but you're looking at the environment and what the environment behavior is at the time that you're engaging the mob. You're looking at potentially they mentioned, what was it, the pyrophobia or pyrophobic disposition. It might not even be that you're dealing with a class per se that engages or changes a mob's behavior, but you're dealing with an object, something like fire. I don't know, maybe what if you had like some sort of fire, like a torch or something. If you had like a torch, they said, okay, here it is. Yeah, if you had a torch equipped and the wolf sees that, then it'll run away from the fire. Like, so an object, so something that you have on you could trigger some sort of reaction. So it's a gear. As part of that disposition, there's environmental effects that could play into that. There's classes that play into that. There's a lot that play into just dispositions, but I'm still in the same boat with you. It's one layer, of what would make up an entire game. So I think that it's a really great layer. I love hearing about it. I think that they've done a tremendous job from what I've seen and what I've heard so far, with it. But I'm really excited to actually see it in play out in detail. They showed us the alarmist disposition, one of the streams, and that was really, really neat. I was excited to see something like that, but I'm really excited to see the rest of them now. I want to see all these play out. I want to see what this really means for us, how this feels and things like that. So I think, as we continue to see the game unfold before us, disposition is going to play a big part in the adventuring. But like you said, it might not really be a factor when it comes to crafting. So what is crafting, going to have on its side of the house that may mirror or may look like the disposition system, where it does have some variations, in its skill sets? Because we did learn through, Basgrim's video with Saithos that crafting and adventuring kind of mirror each other in difficulty. So I can only assume that they might have some mirrors when it comes to, potential effects, or I guess you could say challenges that they run into. And I consider the disposition when it comes to the AI and how they react, or mobs and how they react, to be somewhat of a challenge. So I would only assume that crafting may offer a challenge like that as well. Hopefully, maybe we'll see something that has some interest in it when it comes to crafting, something unique that offers some of that same kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. We're on the same page, and that's probably where I am with it too. I did laugh though at the bug that they were talking about with the wolves that were attacking, and then they were freaking out because of the torch.
Oh yeah,
like kept attacking. I thought that was really funny. It's not the
the
bug
butt
I laughed at the most.
the butt jump.
But that one made me laugh. So the one I liked the most actually, when he was talking about some of his prior work, when he was doing the thing that picks up on social media for pictures to look for like obscene life circumstances. It just made me think of how funny it would be, like if you just have like a really buggy system, and how many people didn't get a job because something stupid in their picture triggered as like alcoholic. No way, that's not happening. That made me laugh. But then the whole thing.
Was it Facebook, right?
It was Facebook, but I think it was also supposed to work with like Instagram and other stuff. Maybe I'm generalizing too much, but I thought that was funny.
No, and like you said, the wolf thing was definitely fun. I mean, I think that hearing stories like that is always good. That's one thing that I really enjoyed about the show. So, I'm going to basically, I've got another subject that I think will take a little time because I want to flesh it out a little bit. So I want to get to that topic before, we run out of time. So we're about the halfway point here. So I'm going to go ahead and look to switch over. But I do want to say, I do agree with you. I think that there was a lot of things in here that really, for me, being the person that I am, really, digging through the forum post and really just absorbing as much information as I can from all these guys. There wasn't a lot to me that I heard that was new, but at the same time, I loved hearing it again because it means that, it's reconfirming a lot of the things that I kind of already knew or had an idea in my head of how that might work. Like I heard about the pyrophobic disposition, way back when we saw it in the newsletter. But at the same time, I didn't quite understand what that meant. And I talked about that before, what does that mean? That's the one that I really don't understand. And, hearing things like that talked about a little bit more, I love that. There's a lot of other little good juicy nuggets in there. So, if you haven't already, guys, make sure you go check that video out. It's on the Voice of Terminus YouTube channel. We'll make sure we link it in the YouTube for this recording as well. So if you haven't already, if you're not following Voice of Terminus and you're following me, I don't know why you're following me and not Voice of Terminus, but we'll make sure that you get over to Voice of Terminus and find those guys as well, because it's a really great video to watch. And just, again, I love the interaction that the devs have with these guys. They kept it lighthearted. They kept it fun. They talked about some things that were a little off topic, not Pantheon related. For example, looking at Zippy's room and things like that. But that really, it puts the person behind the developer and behind the kind of VR mask. Like you start to see who the person is. And I think that that's really neat. I love seeing who these people are, in real life and what they do. Like Zippy said, he has an orthodontic practice and then he does this as well. So hearing somebody that's, he sounds very educated, very intelligent. And again, it blows my mind to think that he's able to do what he's been able to do up to this point and everything else on top of that. So I was very impressed. It seemed like a very quality individual overall, but just, again, the drive, the passion that, he shows while he's talking about Pantheon, you can just feel that. And I think I've said that over and over again, but I continue to say it because it continues to be true. These developers, no matter what show they're doing or where they're at, every time I've seen them talk or heard them talk, it's just a passionate conversation. It's usually fun, lighthearted, but at the same time, these guys know their stuff, and it almost feels like they live it in and out. So I don't know what they do besides Pantheon, because it seems like every time they talk about Pantheon, they know every single detail of it, and they can really, well, they can give us as much as they can give us now. And I'm sure that when time comes, they're going to have a whole, load of information to just dump on us and let us, have that for the taking. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about disposition, about AI, and then again, just seeing more of the devs come up and do streams and do interviews and do things like that, because I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a lot of fun to see Zippy in that light versus, on the forums or, behind the curtain there on the stream where you can just hear his voice. I like seeing the person who makes up Zippy Z. So that was fun. But okay. So I had one other topic. Is there anything else you want to talk about or mention before we move on, Muldoon? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess just one more thing about the Voice of Terminus interview is that it was nice to hear the confirmation of something that we probably all saw coming as they move forward in pre-alpha, that now that they have a system that they feel is working with the abilities, that they can start developing the classes better and finally start pushing out some of those classes that people are really dying to see more of. And I think that was probably the most important thing said in the stream, because it really kind of showed that they're not just in a honeymoon phase of the game, of an idea is turning into an actual game. It sounds like it's actually moving forward to a position that even impresses them, that they can finally start developing what they want to develop and give people more to chew on. Because I think as we move into alpha, it's really important that the hype train that this game has had, it starts to move even faster and start to pull even more people in, so that it can have a really successful launch and just have a really big community because of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna kind of pick up here, and I'm going to switch over to something that I have read about and thought about, and I have a lot of opinions about this subject, and I know a lot of people do as well. So I want to get your thoughts on it too, because I haven't got a chance to talk to you about this. So I'm excited to hear what your thoughts are, and because we are so different on a lot of our opinions, I'm curious to see if we're the same on this one. Maybe not. And that's
what's funny
always
you
good.
say that, but I feel like a lot of the time so far in the radio that I've been a part of, we have a hive mind. So I'm hoping we do have different opinions here, but go ahead.
Well, okay. Yeah, we do talk a lot off the radio, so that might be where I'm getting that different of opinions. So, okay. All right, guys. So I have been just sitting on the forums day in and day out, of course, as always. I've been reading a lot of things that have been posted by people, and one subject I keep seeing over and over again, I keep hearing about, it keeps coming up, and I find it really interesting to me, because I don't think a lot of people have experienced a game without maps, but I think the people that have, for the most part, enjoyed that experience. So I've read post after post after post after post about maps in the game, and I even read at one point. So I had someone that was, they described it as, I'm not sure why you wouldn't have a map in the game, because most people are going to have a website open which has a map on it and looking at that map while playing the game on the website. And I started thinking about this to kind of put like an analogy together of what this means and how it actually plays out in my mind, like how I actually think about this and how it comes together. So I put together an analogy, and the way that I think of it when it comes to maps, and I'm not even talking about crafting maps, I'm not going to go into that just yet. We'll maybe discuss that in a little bit here, but I want to talk about just like, excuse me, just having a map in general. So I think of it this way, and I'm going to put a real life scenario situation in play here. So when I'm driving my car, I either can have no map and I can just figure out where I'm going based off of what I know, and I can learn as I go to find out where I can go, and things like that. or I can use a paper map where I can pull a map up and I can look at it. I'm not necessarily going to be driving looking at this paper map. There's no reason for me to drive looking at this paper map because, you know, I can look at it. I go, okay, I need to hit this road, and this road, and then I need to, you know, hope that should put me very close to where I need to be destination wise, and I can stop there and then reevaluate. So I look at my paper map and then I put it back down and I go driving, and I'm paying attention to the road while I'm driving, even with the paper map. Allegedly. Yeah. So then I think of a GPS, for example. And for me with a GPS, especially if I'm on vacation, you know, I'll put a GPS up in my windshield almost, and I'm just going to be honest, I'm most likely watching the GPS almost more than I am the road at times. You know, I'm looking at, especially when we get on those, you know, intersections, or when we get where it's congested, or we get where I'm trying to figure out where I need to go. I'm watching for the next turn that comes up, for the next exit, things like that. Unless I'm on like a long stretch of road where I know if I just follow this road, I'll be good. And I don't have to worry about turnoffs or anything like that. Then I'm watching my GPS very closely, just as much as the road. So I'm going back and forth between GPS road. And really every time I look at the road, it's not looking at anything scenic. It's not looking at anything special. I'm just making sure there's no car in front of me I'm going to hit. And then I'm focusing on the GPS when it comes to where I need to go and how I need to get there. So when I think of in-game maps, I think of them kind of in that situation. I think of it if I have a map that allows me to open it up and see where I'm at, and then kind of plot a course and then follow that course in that map to get there. Or if I open a map up and it's interactive like a GPS would be, I feel like I look at that map much more often and much more frequently than I would if it was a paper map, for example, where it has static objects in it. It's not showing me where I'm at exactly. I'm having to look at the map and then go, oh, I see this street name here, or I see, you know, if I'm thinking of an MMO, I see this giant tree here. That looks like that giant tree there. I must be in this area right here. I can give myself a general location of where I'm at, but I'm not going to get the exact coordinates. So I look at it in, you know, you have those two different types of maps. You have an interactive map, and then you have kind of like a paper map. And then you have the whole other side of the spectrum where you have the no map. You have no map whatsoever. To me, no map, even when I'm in my car in a real life situation or in a game, no map usually to me makes me feel more like I'm at home. And I know that that's not for everyone the same mindset, but to me, I think of me going to, like, you know, in the Marine Corps, I would travel to new locations. I would use the GPS to get there, but as soon as I got there with my GPS, I'd turn it off and I'd go drive around and just look and feel and see what was around the area. I would just want to go explore in my car and just see where I could turn, where I could go, like just kind of, you know, fill the land out and see, you know, where everything was. I wouldn't use my GPS to get there. I wouldn't use a map to get there. I would just go drive around and get to know the environment that I was in, the landscape that I was at, the new place that I was going to call home. So that to me is how I feel when I get into an MMO without a map, like some of the older school MMOs. I would get into a location and I'd go, I have no idea what's here. Let me go walk around and explore and figure it out. And then I can, you know, I know where everything's at. And of course, you know, there's, you know, I'd hit one-way streets, or I'd hit dead ends and have to turn around, you know, things like that. But after I did that one or two times, I'll say two times sometimes because, you know, who knows? But after I did that, I would learn. I would get to know the landscape. I'd get to know the terrain, the streets, the location I was at, and I would get to know it by not only the street names, but just by driving. I would know, okay, you know, I know that sign right there. I know that building right there. I know exactly where I'm at based off of, you know, those houses over there. I've seen that neighborhood before. You know, things like that. You start to get a feel for the landscape, and you start to be able to identify things within, you know, as you're driving, that if I was looking at a GPS, for example, and I just put in the address and I'm just going from point A to point B, I wouldn't necessarily ever see or ever even care to see, because it wouldn't be a priority to me. I'd know how to get to where I need to go without having to know that. So to me, I have the three circumstances, the three possibilities. You have the interactive being the far extreme, and then you have the no map being the far extreme on this end, and then you have a possibility of like an in-game paper map or an external paper map, which I know even if we don't have a map in the game, we'll have an external paper map. Everyone and their brother is going to hand draw this game or a map for us, at some point in time. So it's going to be there if you absolutely need it to kind of get the lay of the land and figure things out. But at the same time, to me, a paper map is even a better option still on an external site, because I can go look at it. I can see kind of where things might be laid out, but I don't get all the for example, I look at a paper map and I see a bridge and I go, okay, I think if I go this way, I should run into that bridge. Well, that bridge on that paper map may look 3 inches away, but when I'm in the game, I might not see that bridge for 3 minutes of running. So, it might you start to get that feeling, oh, have I gone far enough? Have I gone too far? Have I passed it up? Where am I at? You start paying attention to where you're at, the location, where you came from, how to get back to places, things like that. Again, that's the mindset that I put it in. And when I put it like that, when I think of it like that, I lean towards that no map even more so than I did before, because again, it forces me, even if I have an external site with a map, it forces me to pay attention to the terrain, the scenery, the mobs, the environment, what's around me, where things are at. It forces me to do all this stuff that normally if I had an interactive map or even a map in the game that I could pull up consistently and know exactly where I'm at and really get details of where things are at, I wouldn't be paying attention to that side of the game as much if I was able to pull up a kind of an overlay of it. So I wanted to see, with that explanation, with that kind of example, does that resonate with you, or does that make sense? And what is your thoughts on that? Because I haven't heard them myself.
So, yeah, we've never talked about this for sure. I want to draw on my prior experience with EverQuest, because when I was a wee young lad, when I was playing the game by myself, trying to meet people online, I didn't have any real life friends that played it. I would be so excited to get into a group. Hey, we're over in Mistmore. And I'm like, hey, cool, where's that? They're like, well, you got to do some traveling. And they'd give me some directions. And I'm like, well, that meant nothing to me. So, first of all, Kelethin. I don't know, maybe what I'm about to say kind of resonates with people, but Kelethin is, once you understand Greater Fate Arc, once you have that in your mind and you've got it mapped out in that space in your mind, it's very easy to navigate. But as a kid, oh my gosh, that place was a nightmare. That was an actual nightmare. Um, so I eventually would figure out, okay, well, if I can make it to Felwith, which I've gone there before, if I follow the left wall and then just keep following it, that next zone I hit, that's Lesser Fate Arc. And as soon as I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, this place is really dangerous, but it's kind of not really dynamic. It's funny because when Legacy of Ikisha came out, whenever they actually put maps into the game, looking at the map of Lesser Fate Arc, I was like, yep, it's a rectangle. That's literally what it is. Um, I I spent a lot of time like following walls, like calculating, okay, the zone I need is 2 zones on my right. So I need to follow it, skip the next zone I see, and keep going, and then I'll get there. With Lesser Fate Arc, that was when kind of the light bulb came on, when that really worked for me, like trying to get to Steamfont Mountains, like, okay, follow the wall, follow the wall. Like, following the wall was probably the most common thing I ever did in EverQuest, and that sounds really lame, but it was kind of fun identifying the right way to get someplace on my own without a map. But I bring up that example of me using the wall because I had to rely on something to get someplace, and it was robbing me of actually traveling into the zone and actually enjoying some of the stuff you can see. Um, In EverQuest, that was a lot more. It felt a lot more dangerous. I kind of think that Pantheon will feel that dangerous too, but I also think that zones are a little bit more well designed. Kithakor Forest was an actual nightmare because you can't follow a wall without hitting an undead mob. That was a death trap, and it was really hard to navigate.
Yep.
You definitely did not want to go anywhere but the wall. I don't know anyone personally who would go through Kithakor like when it was level appropriate without following a wall. So if I had had a map at the time, I probably would have still followed the wall once I learned how dangerous the place was. But I think with the map, it actually would have pushed me a little bit more toward cutting places. Like I can make a diagonal movement here. You know, this is almost like a complete diagonal position where the zone line is, not just follow the wall to my left and forever.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in between on this because in my real life, I usually when I'm traveling, it's not for pleasure at all. I'm on my way to work or I'm on my way to somewhere I've got to be. It's my first time to go to this particular doctor, this new eye doctor, this dentist. And I'm a punctual person, but it's not because I leave with ample time, because I prepare. And when I travel, I usually have a GPS up. I understand. I just moved to where I live now about 4 years ago, not quite, maybe 3.5. I have a really good idea of generally where places are, and I could probably navigate there myself now. But I still use a GPS because I'm really interested in just getting there on time and cutting through the BS. So when it comes to maps, I'm less of interest. I kind of want to just get from point A to point B. But when it comes to video games, I love to smell the roses, look at places, look at landmarks. Final Fantasy 14 has some of the best um, horizons. Just looking over the side of something, even a place you can't reach, beautiful. There are some places that are just magical and they don't make any sense. You're not even sure what you're looking at. You can't get there and you never will be able to. You just have to kind of imagine what that place is that you're looking at. And you don't get to those places by just following the map and going. So I I understand the map resource will be there. I think Pantheon should put the effort into putting a map in the game. I think that would be highly successful. But I'm kind of personally somebody who likes to visually understand where I'm going. And I think after enough travel, you start to just understand the corners you can cut,
Yep.
the general direction where you're going, and what you're trying to do. And you don't really need a map. Where
Absolutely.
I'm definitely going to want a map is if we have a map in game, I want the ability to pin my own locations because I'm going to be a huge gatherer. Gathering, I'm. I told you guys seriously that I don't get bored with anything. I can do anything forever. And gathering is something where I just kind of like turn my brain off and I could sit there and gather for 16 hours and not sweat, not think for a moment that I'm bored or I'm going to kill myself. Like, so I would want the ability to have a map to pinpoint certain areas so I can get a really good idea of where I want to go, check for rare spawns, stuff like that. So on this one, I'm going to play devil's advocate, but I lean toward not having maps because I would want people to kind of experience what I experienced when I was a kid, which was sometimes fear to go to a new zone. Like, oh gosh, I've never been there, and I'm probably going to see 84 dragons per square foot. So I don't know what to do, and I'll just follow a wall. But also not follow a wall. So I don't know. I don't feel very strongly one way or the other. I want maps for utility. I think we should have them. And of course, people are just going to alt tab and go to a website that has it if it's on game. So I really think they should put something in game.
Well, so that brings up an interesting thing, though. You know, being EverQuest, being a 1990 game, you have a game that was kind of more boxy than anything. I mean, in reality, you know, the graphics, just the technology at that point in time, most areas, most zones were more or less some sort of square or rectangle or, you know, some sort of you know, shape in that way. A lot of straight lines. When you're following a quote unquote wall, it was very more or less it goes to a point and then it cuts and then it goes straight until it hits the next point, and it was a lot of straight lines in that quote unquote wall. I feel like technology nowadays will help provide something a little more rugged, something, a little more interesting. Even if you were to follow a quote unquote wall, the terrain itself, in my opinion, shouldn't be as level, as flat. And
it would be so much more interesting. You're right about that.
yeah, so I mean, even if you got into a zone and you're like, I'm gonna take a left and follow this wall, you might end up running over a mountain, running into a bunch of rocks you can't pass, and you've got to now figure out a way to get about those. Or even, you don't even have to have the zones against the wall. You could actually have the zones that are like in caves within the terrain itself, so you might never even find where you're trying to go, and to me, something like that, when I think of that, I think that would actually lead into what you're saying is somebody that's following that quote unquote wall, they may miss a lot of things that, because they're afraid to get off the wall, they may miss a lot of things that they wouldn't experience normally. So to that, I'm actually going to say this, and I know this is strange because I love the no map idea, and I hope that's the direction we stay. I know that the paper map has been talked about, and it said that, yeah, it's most likely, if not going to be in the game, it's definitely, there's going to be paper maps all over the internet. That's just the day and age we live in. I guarantee you by the time this game's released, there's going to be somebody out there that is drawing out, hand drawing, or whether it's virtually, whatever it is, they're going to be drawing out maps and putting things in place. And they're going to be trying to make these things very, 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 I guess you could say interactive, for the most part. I can see it happening. People are going to try to do it, on websites. They're going to try to make sure that you have a very detailed map, and there's going to be sites out there that are probably just for maps of Pantheon. Who knows? But I like the idea of kind of having some sort of paper map. And I like the idea of having, okay, I'm in a zone. Here's the shape of this zone, and I'm just going to kind of give like a blank, I guess you could say, shape of it. I'm not going to get any details of where things are at. It's going to be a blank sheet, more or less, and it's going to show me, okay, for example, let's think of an island. Let's think of, I've got a picture of an island. It's got the water around it, but I can see where the edges of the island are. Now, that's going to be blank. I liked when you brought up the fact of pins. I'd like to be able to pin something. I would personally think that that's a really neat idea to help keep me engaged in that sort of thing, which is, if I was given kind of that blank sheet and they gave me some pins to where I could pin something and make a little note of it myself, I think that'd be kind of neat for me if I had that ability in game. Because if I have an ability to do that in game, like for example, you find something that's really rare, or you find a camp that's really nice to go to potentially look for a rare mob, or maybe they've got some crafting material over there in that area that you really like to craft, being able to just pin that and go, oh cool, that's a good place for me to go. So when I go and I'm looking at my hand built kind of map or idea, I know. Now, is that going to take any away from me, taking away any of my exploring or anything like that? Not really. I mean, personally, for me, I think if I had just a blank sheet with kind of an outline of a place, I'm still going to want to explore that. But does it mean that I want that to fill in automatically and show me all the landmarks and details? Not necessarily. I would kind of much rather just put a pin in it and go, oh, hey, there's a big tree here. Remember that. So if I'm ever looking at it and trying to explain it to somebody like you, for example, I'm like, hey, if you go to the big tree in the middle of the map, just to the west of it, you'll find a camp and I'm there. Something like that. Now, I can explain that without that map or with it, but that map is not going to really change how I explain that. And that's kind of my whole purpose of not having a map is I want to have something, I want to have some way, some reason to encourage me to memorize the terrain, the environment, the land itself, and not rely on a map to guide me to where I need to go. So even if I had just kind of that blank outline, I think that wouldn't impact me in a way that was negative or that took away that feeling from me. And like you said, it might encourage me to get off the wall and go see what's kind of in the middle there. Or like you said, also, I might see that, well, if I went diagonal from here and went directly northwest through this entire zone, I'll end up right where I want to be at. So it allows me to kind of get a little more risky, maybe. Not be, I don't want to say not be as scared, but not do the whole, let's just travel the zone line all the way around. And maybe let's take a little bit of a risk. I know a shortcut, I can see it, but I don't know what's from point A to point B. I have no idea. I don't know what the terrain looks like. I mean, it could be that I get halfway there and I figure out that that's not a possible route. It's, you know, there's a wall there. There's some sort of land situation going on, whether it's a canyon or a river or something that I can't cross. It's you know, so it's blocking me. Or it could be that the mobs, like you said, there's 1,000 dragons on top of each other, and there's just no way to get through there. I'm gonna figure it out really quickly. But again, it may be that it's not even a bad route. It's actually a pretty safe route. I'm able to, you know, explore that land at the same time, run through it. And because I took that risk to run straight through it, because I was able to see that in my, you know, in my mind there, where I need to go and how I need to get there, because I was able to take that risk, then I saw some things that maybe I wouldn't see normally, or, you know, that I wouldn't have seen running around the edges like I did. So again, I don't know. I think that's kind of the limitation for me. That's where I would like to see it, I guess, the maxed out at. I wouldn't want to see anything past that, because I feel like anything past that, again, and I'm relying more on what the map is saying versus what I know and what I find out by myself. So
Yeah, I could see that. And honestly, I think there are maps out there that have way too much information. I don't know if you ever played Guild Wars 2, but that is so overwhelming. Like, here are the 19 points of interest that you missed, and they're here. So you should probably go get them, because zone completion was a thing. And then on top of that, like, the map was just so busy, and that felt like such a guided tour. That map, I hated. I actually never liked looking at. I could see wanting some very similar, very simple map. I think one thing that made travel in EverQuest scary, made it rewarding to understand the terrain, to understand landmarks, and get an idea of it, is that corpse recovery before a certain period was such a hassle that it made you want to find creative, safe ways to travel through the map. So even sometimes when you're on the wall, where the wall is literally at like an 86-degree angle, and it doesn't look good. There's nothing great about it. It doesn't add anything to the terrain. It felt like a safe spot to be. Um, I guess I just I want a map that kind of gives you an idea, adds to the life of the game. I understand that. I kind of also look at it as, if you open the map and you're looking at it, it kind of adds to the depth of the game. You're in a game. The idea that there have been years and centuries before you where the places existed. They've been well put together, and people have charted it out for you. And you could look at the map and say, "Oh, well, there's, you know, Yggdrasil, the tree of life or whatever from World of Warcraft." So that's kind of cool. I think having a map that has those landmarks would be good, but I don't want a map personally that is just filled with garbage. Just like, I
Yeah.
don't want a bunch of stuff in it. I would just kind of like a glance at an idea of where I'm traveling and what I'm doing.
So I'm gonna end it on this, because I know we're getting close on time. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
give you 3 options here, and I'm gonna go back to the first scenario I had, and you get to choose between one of the 3. You either get to choose no map, you either get to choose a paper map with, you know, just static marks, or you get to choose an interactive map. Which one of those 3 would you prefer?
So I'm going to give you the straight answer. I'm going to explain it, and I'll be quick.
Okay.
I'm going to choose no map, because I would be really okay with that. I could survive. I could get through the game, and I think it would be a lot of fun. Because in the game, man, I don't. It's hard for me to answer, because kind of like where I'm in real life and I'm trying to get somewhere, I don't want to waste time. and I'm probably gonna like almost quit my job over when this game launches because I want to do so much. I don't want to waste time trying to travel, but a part of me also wants to be really inquisitive and really experience the world and have fun with it. So I'm gonna say no map. If we had to choose one of those options, I'd say no map because when I was a nerd kid, I played Super Metroid. I had graph paper and I literally mapped out that entire game. Every single box was a room you could go into and what was connected in it, what was inside of it. And that was fun for me to put together. It was a nice little project. So if I feel like I need a map, I can create one. I'm going to say no map.
Perfect. So we're in complete agreement because I would personally.
No, never mind. I don't want to agree with you. I want a map real bad. It needs
he
to
wants
be
interactive,
really convoluted.
flowers popping up on it everywhere.
Right.
No, but I mean, I think that's the, I always think, for me at least, I put it this way: I would much rather see no map, and I would like to see that, especially. Let's just say it this way. I would like to see no map because I think that there's going to be places that when you're going to explore at first, especially, they're definitely going to be, like we saw in the chat here, scary. You're not going to know what's around the corner. Is it going to be a dead end? Is it going to be a boss fight? What's next? What's around the corner? And for me, no map adds to that. And it really helps you kind of feel involved in the game more. And if we do end up down the road, start seeing, see the need for a map, if it becomes an overwhelming urge, everybody in the community is like, yeah, you might as well put one in there. I'm hoping that they find a unique way to put something in there that's more static and non-interactive than anything. But again, I'm going to lean right there with you in the no map terrain, and I think that that's the best option. I think that's the one that's going to get players most engaged and really help that immersion factor when you're playing Pantheon. So that's my vote, and I'm glad to hear, for the most part, I've heard a lot of people. There's a lot of discussions on the forums, but it seems like there's a very overwhelming response for a lot of the veteran players that are coming to Pantheon that are urging for this type of, resolution, I guess you could say. They're really looking forward to having that no map kind of gameplay that really helps you kind of draw yourself into the game, as you go through. So,
and
we're
from
out
a
of time.
Developer standpoint, that's less for them to have to do. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But so we're out of time, and I think we could continue this conversation. I'm glad that I kind of cut us off there and gave us 30 minutes to talk about it, because I knew it was going to be a fun one. But we'll definitely continue to talk about things like this. I want to look for pressing issues on the forums or pressing issues that are out there in the public. And, again, we want to continue to look for things to talk about on these podcasts and just share with people. These are things that, for a lot of people, we already know this. But for some people that watch this or come by and see what we're doing or listen to what we're talking about, this is kind of new information for them because maybe they've not looked into Pantheon before. So we try to make sure that we give our opinion, but also let people know that these are just our opinions, and in most cases, and nothing has been, written in stone. So there's always possibility that Visionary Realms can do what they need to do to make sure the game is fun and enjoyable. But these are what our opinions are on these certain subjects, and we're going to continue to give them, as we go through this. So thanks everybody for stopping by. Appreciate everybody on Pantheon Radio hanging out with us tonight. Muldoon, one time for the crowd as they go away. Where can they find you at?
They can find me on twitch.tv/MRPD Muldoon, and every Wednesday and Friday for now on Pantheon Radio with Saicred. I had a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Have a good night, guys.
Perfect. And you can also find me on Twitch TV /Saicred. That's SAICRED. And also on Pantheon Radio with Muldoon here every Wednesday and Friday night. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us, guys. As always, continue to give us feedback, continue to give us information, continue to post those questions so we can get them, broadcast and we can answer them for you here. But until Friday, we will hopefully see you all on Twitch until then. And then come Friday, back on Pantheon Radio for another exciting show. And thanks so much, guys. We'll see you then.
Thanks. Bye forever.